Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindie Chavez here. Today is Wednesday, December the 12th, 2018. It's 4 p.m. New York time, 1 p.m. Los Angeles time. That's 9 p.m. London time and 8 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. Good morning, Sydney, and hello from wherever you are listening around the world. We're going to start recording this thing right here, so you hear a little voice saying that.
Recording has started.
There we go. And it's another Daily Dose of Happy. And we're going to be looking more into the work of Neville Goddard, the Power of Awareness book. And this is also going to be another opportunity for people listening to the live stream of this podcast to ask questions and share comments and so forth in the Facebook Law of Attraction Changed My Life group. So if you're listening in on the live stream and you got questions, start typing. Start your keyboards. And we will do our best to answer them in the most profound way that we know how. And if we can't think of profound, we'll just make it up. But Cindie, it was a fun morning this afternoon. We're going to have to see if we can do it as well this morning, rather. We'll have to see if we can do it as well this afternoon. But how you doing? Your day been going good, I hope.
Yeah, I'm doing great. And I loved the questions this morning. It was so much fun to have those questions coming in and to brainstorm together to answer them. And that's just wonderful. I hope that we can continue to do that. So.
That's the plan, actually. And we're finding, the reason is the plan is people are liking it. And, so you give people what they want, right? Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. And the best part is we give the people what they want, and we want it too, because we like it. So it's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And it's useful.
It is.
It's useful to be able to work those things out. I mean,
yes.
I have to say, sometimes when someone asks a question that I'm answering it, I may be, it may be a question I answer all the time, but it may not be. It may be a question that I have to think a minute, and it helps me too to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Shared benefits is what they call that in EFT. It's when a bunch of people are all tapping together to help one person. Other people will recognize that they've gotten some kind of health benefit or emotional benefit out of it as well. And I think that's just what happens when we connect and communicate, and it's exciting.
And Nasha is asking, is this live? Yes, Nasha, this is live. Yes. You are watching live. So thank you for joining us today. And start typing those questions in there. But
Yes, it's 3:06 p.m. in New Orleans. I love when you do the times all over the world.
I'm going to have to get one of those clocks like they have in the White House. You know how, or in a newsroom, right? They have the clocks by, all the different time zones all around.
You can put them behind you so that they're all there on the wall, right?
Right, yeah. That'd be cool. I'd like that. Of course, it would take about 5 minutes to do the introduction, but still. 24 time zones, yeah.
It reminds me of when I was little and there was this show called Romper Room.
Oh, I remember that one.
Miss Mary Ann.
Yeah.
She would hold up her magic mirror,
right.
Which I don't know what it was. I think it was just a big circle with nothing in it. But she would look through it and say, I see, right, all the people. I see Anne and I see Tiffany and I see Mark. And I'd be waiting. Come on, see me.
Right.
It finally one day. I was 4 years old, really excited.
That's great. That's fabulous. Yeah, Romper Room. That's a really old show. That goes back a long, long way.
Yes, I'm telling my age. So
that's in the age of Bob Keeshan and Captain Kangaroo. This is almost like pre Sesame Street, really.
Captain Kangaroo, Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers. Yep, that's right. Yeah, who we actually profiled.
We did.
Yes,
and the Mr. Rogers biopic was so great. It really was. The documentary that was done on him in the last year or so. It was just so funny to watch, though, because they talked about how the sets were so makeshift almost.
Yeah, right.
No money put in, no resources
no budget.
Put into the sets. Yeah, and looking at them now, I'm going, wow, those sets were really just bare bones. And as a kid, I never noticed. I was 5 years old. I just loved that show.
Absolutely.
And so the power of imagination, right? It's like watching it as a child. We didn't pick it apart and see that, wow, that's a really crappy set. We were just in our heads, in the imaginary world, and enjoying ourselves. So it's kind of where we're going back to with Neville.
Well, yeah. I mean, the power of imagination. That's where we are.
Exactly.
Very good. So we got a lot of people saying hello. Hello, everybody. And I don't
hello.
I don't see any questions coming in yet. Oh, well, okay. This is about as broad as I've seen. Norsine
Okay.
is asking, hi, how can I apply LOA in my life? That's pretty broad.
Well, that's pretty broad. And we're going to get more specific today I think that the answer to that question is to just recognize that everything that you're experiencing is your own creation.
Yes.
That's it. That's the very first step, is realizing how powerful we are as creators, and that everything that we experience, we are responsible to the experience. Now, I'm not saying if something bad happens, it's your fault. This isn't about fault or blame.
Right.
It's just about our responsibility to choose how we experience something. In life, there are troubles. It's like I always joke, welcome to planet Earth. But
right.
Things happen, right? We have things happen that aren't so comfortable. We have contrast. But we get to choose our response to that. And that's part of what we're doing with the podcast, is just all getting together to help each other and support each other respond the way we'd like to respond, so that we can create more good things in our life. So that's the answer to that broad question, is just start with awareness that, wow, I get to choose my own response, and all of this stuff around me, whatever it is, whatever situation, I get to create it the way I want it. So.
Absolutely. And also the recognition that what you're responding to around you is the predominant thought pattern you've had for quite some time. So it gives you a clue of just how effective you've been. I mean, we are manifesting all the time. We just don't necessarily realize it.
Well, it was helpful last week. I think there was a part we read that said, or we either read it or we talked about it, but the idea was that everything going on in my life is not a result of what I'm thinking right now.
Right.
It's a result of what I was thinking in the past.
Yes.
And so that's a nice comforting thought, right? It's like, okay, I get to have a do-over if I'm
every
not so
single
happy
day. With a constant do-over. Every time we see something we don't like, it's do-over time. I mean, here in the United States, we have that commercial, we have the Staples commercial in the U.S. and maybe around the world, I don't know, with the easy button. Well, the easy button is always available to us. Anytime we want to hit the easy button, it's there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, so we are already to chapter 20 in Neville's book, The Power of Awareness.
I think I actually have a question, too, from Nasha. If you hang on a second.
Let's answer the questions first.
Yeah.
Because we will get to the book.
We will. We always do. But Nasha is saying, I wanted to ask, I read one of Neville's articles, The Man and Who Waited for His Life of Bread, for his loaf of bread, I'm sorry. That one wish, thing when you don't want to give up, Neville says, stick to it and you'll get it like the third man got the loaf. I don't know the story myself. Do you know that story?
I'm not sure what the reference is.
Yeah.
I don't know that Neville article or lecture off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think we'd have to know more about what that article is.
It's one thing we have been talking about, though, is persistence.
That's true. Yep.
Right, and repetition. Like even this morning in the chapters we read this morning, where Neville was talking about the importance of repetition, and he was actually admitting how much he repeats things, but saying it's really important that we repeat these things and that we repeat them over and over until they become part of the way we, like our default way of viewing things.
Right.
Right.
Yes. That's a huge deal.
To have somebody show up with a question is like, okay, how do I apply LOA? Well, when you're at that point, we're just learning about it. What we see with a lot of people is they may come back in a day or so and say it didn't work.
Right. Yes.
Right. And it's like, okay, well, I love the analogy. Neville uses it. Abraham probably uses it because it's so good. And that's planting seeds in a garden.
Yes.
I mean, you don't plant the seeds in the dirt and then come back the next day and say those seeds were bad. Right? You water them, you make sure they're getting light, sometimes for days and weeks, maybe months on end.
Depending on the plant.
Before you start to see some kind of evidence of manifestation. But you don't worry over it every day. You just keep with the program.
In fact, interesting you should mention that about plants, because they definitely do not recommend worrying to plants. They recommend talking nicely to plants.
That's right. That's right. And I was just, using a metaphor, but it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good one to remember.
We had some plants that we planted last year, and at some point we actually said, okay, maybe these seeds were bad. And I just kept saying, let's just hold on. Let's just wait. And about 10 more days went by, and one morning we woke up and there were the little sprouts. It was so exciting. But it's such a good lesson, because that long stretch of time between the time that you make the intention and start assuming the feeling of the wish and the time it hardens into fact, that's the waiting game part.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
So that's when we have to be persistent.
I think it's worth doing. I think it's worth remembering that it's not about how fast you are, and it's not about how fast the universe is. Truly, the universe is always extremely fast. It's us that slows down.
Right.
I mean, we've those of us who've been doing this for some time have all experienced something where we manifested something literally like that, and we're blown away by how fast it arrived. Well,
Right.
it turns out everything will show up quickly if you don't resist. Problem is, we resist like crazy. We have all kinds of
Right.
resistances in place that very often we don't even know what they are. We aren't even aware of them half the time, you know. So that's what the real question is. And that's why whenever somebody asks a question about how long it takes, my answer is, well, that depends. How much resistance do you intend to put up?
That's right. It can
Yeah.
take a long time.
Yeah, it
But
just depends
what
on
I
us.
always remind myself is that we have this idea of perfect timing.
Yes.
And that's usually when something happens where it seems to us that the universe gave us some beautiful synchronicity and everything fell into place and everything worked out so easily. It's like, oh, perfect timing. I was in the right place at the right time. One of my favorite affirmations is from Louise Hay. And it was, I'm in the right place at the right time doing the right thing.
That's nice.
And that's what I try to remember, is it's always perfect timing.
Yeah.
How do I know? Because it happens when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah. So
Very
that's
good.
a good thing to remember.
Yeah, I like that.
Is
That's
that
good.
you're right on time. We're right. We're all right on time.
Nasha's trying to
So
give us some more
what-
information, but Nasha, it would actually help if you can show us that site. You said it came from a site, but if you can find that link, that way we can read it too, and we can give you a more intelligent answer. Because we don't know the particular analogy, so it's kind of hard to give you an answer on it.
Yeah, and I'm uncertain of the question as well. So the clearer, when you're asking questions to us live, the clearer you can be about the question, the easier it is for us to answer.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Well, actually, and Lynn has a question too. She says, we got some new people. This is good. She says, how would you start to manifest? I'm new to this. So, going back to what we said before.
Well, first of all, you're already manifesting.
That's right.
So we're all creating our experience every day. The difference with this idea is that we recognize that we're creating, and so we can do it consciously, which means we can create more of the things we want and less of the things we don't want. So same answer there is just be aware that your thoughts, your dominant vibrations, your dominant thoughts, the story that you're telling in your head is what's creating everything. So I'll give you an example. I had a friend that for a long time, her story was always, well, nothing ever works out for me. And so something would happen that didn't work out for her, and she would say, see, that's the story of my life. Nothing ever works out for me.
Right.
So what do you think she was creating? More of things that weren't working out, right? And so it's just, and we all do this. So
Absolutely.
It's just an awareness. When we start having an awareness of the story, we talked this morning I was saying that for a long time, one of my money stories was, and I thought I was being very optimistic and, looking at things in a good light, being grateful. And I would always say there's always just enough. It always comes just at the right time. And one day it hit me that that's not really what I wanted to be creating. I wanted to have plenty, and I wanted to have more than enough, and I wanted it not to be just arriving in the nick of time, right? It's like, I wanted an easier money story than that. But that was the story that I'd been telling, and so that's what I was experiencing. So that's where you start. You start with your I am story, the story that you tell about yourself, whether you're telling it to other people out loud or whether you're just telling it in your head, because we do that too.
Absolutely.
Running conversation in our head about our story. that's where you start. Start there. That's what Neville's been teaching us about, is our thoughts and how to look forward towards what we want and then assume that feeling of the wish fulfilled. Whatever you're wishing for, if you can assume that feeling of what it would be like to already have that thing. That's where we're going with Neville right now in the power of awareness. So, well, I'm wondering if you want to do a couple quick promos and then check back with questions, and then we can dive in.
Okay. Yep. That sounds good. So, especially for our newcomers, I want to invite everybody who's not yet a subscriber to the podcast to become one. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. And when you subscribe, you get all of our episodes coming right to your smartphone every single day that we do them automatically. And it's really, really easy to do. We provided links in the description here on the Facebook page for those who are listening to the live stream. They're also on the page of our website where the recording is, once this is recorded and put up there, which will be within an hour after we're done with the recording of the podcast. If you can't find the links, just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and you'll see 2 links there, one for Android devices, one for Apple devices. Just click the right one for whatever you're using, and it will walk you right through the process. It's very, very simple to set up. And then just make sure you check the podcast app every single day on your phone, and you'll be able to find the latest podcasts that we've recorded, because we do them every single day, or just about every day. We do them about 11 of them a week right now. In addition to that, we're asking everybody, continue to put out on social media that you're listening, because that's how people are finding us. They're finding us through groups, or they're finding us through comments, they're finding us through tweets, all kinds of things that you can do on social media, no matter what you're using, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Reddit, I don't care what it is. Whatever you're using, put it out there that you're listening, because that will help more and more people find out about us. Because our goal is to get the entire world happy. That's why we call it a Daily Dose of Happy. And for the newcomers, why do we want to be happy? Because when we're in our happiest place, that's when we do our best manifesting. That's when we're able to get the best results. So we want to have the whole world be in their happiest place so that the whole world can get the kind of results that they want. So, yes, please subscribe and share, and that's all there is to it.
Yep, and thank you for subscribing, and thank you for sharing. I can't stress enough how important it has been in my own life that people have shared things. So many books I love, movies I love, recipes I love, places I love to go, podcasts have all been because someone shared it somewhere on social media and said, I'm really enjoying this. So I've gone to check it out. And it's so funny. I never really thought about that till we started asking people to share. And I thought, wow, I'm just looking around my office at the books and the decks I use and just different things. I thought so many of these were someone sharing on social media. Right. And I had to check it out. So if you're enjoying it, people will appreciate it if you share it with them. And we will appreciate it too. We hold you in a space of success. And so...
also, somebody, Nashi made a comment. I thought I'd mention what her comment was, because it was a good one. She says she hasn't been getting any notifications, even though she's been a subscriber, so she wants to recheck her subscription. It's a good thing to remember on all smartphones that I know of. Let's not say all, just in case there's an exception.
Oh, yes.
There's actually a place in your settings where you can set up whether or not you're being notified for something. So go to your settings, and then in the settings, look for your podcast software, and you'll be able to see whether you've got notifications set up. That's a good point, Nasha. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, because it doesn't do you a lot of good if you're not being notified that the new version or the new episode is out. So
that's right.
All right. Well, we are starting with chapter 20. And we often talk about Neville and the way he will use a verse from the Bible. And I know some of you probably have heard me say this many times, but I know we may have new listeners. I'll say it again. That may excite you, and that may turn you off, and that may feel confusing, and a lot of different reactions to someone quoting the Christian Bible in their law of attraction message. Neville does it, and then he gives you his explanation of his own definition of what these scripture verses and certain words mean, and it's probably unlike anything that you've ever heard before. It's very esoteric, So I always say, well, just wait. You might be really excited and happy and then decide, what? I don't
What are they talking about?
On the other hand, you may be like, oh, I don't want to hear this. And then you hear his definition. You're like, okay, I'm liking it more. Who knows? So just give it a minute and be open-minded here. But the name of the chapter 20 is righteousness. And I know that when I think of that word, I was always taught that was maybe goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Like if someone was a righteous person, then they were a good person, or they did the right thing, right? It's like Neville starts right off. He says in the preceding chapter, righteousness was defined as the consciousness of already being what you want to be.
This is why we call it the Neville decoder ring. You have to have your decoder ring in order to figure out what the heck he's talking about.
But here's something interesting. Is that in past chapters and in other Neville books that we've covered on the podcast, Neville talks about sin. And he talks about forgiveness of sin. Mm-hmm. Which, I was taught as a young person to believe that sin was when you did something wrong.
Right.
And that forgiveness was when God or a human said, we forgive you, right?
Right.
But Neville has a completely different definition. And the original language actually has Neville's definition for sin.
Which is interesting.
It doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It means that you missed the mark. Mm-hmm. So if you imagine shooting an arrow at a bullseye and you miss the bullseye. Maybe you missed the target completely.
Yes, right.
The arrow just flies over the top. To forgive it, or to redeem it, means to make it right. So you would straighten up your aim, and you would aim better, and you would hit the target. And maybe you keep practicing, and then you hit the bullseye. That's all that means. And so what I think is interesting here is that Neville is saying righteousness, he is defining it as the consciousness of already being what you want to be. So if you see that word, that root word in there, right, it's like, this is right. This is right for me, right? It's like hitting the mark on the target.
Exactly.
It's right.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels right because it's in alignment with who I really am. So I really like how this fits together. He says, righteousness was defined as the consciousness of already being what you want to be. This is the true psychological meaning, and obviously does not refer to adherence to moral codes, civil law, or religious precepts. You cannot attach too much importance to being righteous. In fact, the entire Bible is permeated with admonition and exhortations on this subject. And then he's going to have a lot of verses that he's going to quote. And so I want you to keep in mind as I read through these few verses that his definition of righteousness is that you're already being that person you want to be, that has the things you want, that does the things you want to do. When we're in that space where we're already tapping into that feeling of being that person, he says that's righteousness. So he says, break off thy sins by righteousness. Now, if we look at sin as missing the mark, then he's saying when you start to be the person that you want to be, you'll hit the mark, right?
Yeah, break off thy sins. Break off thy sins. In other words, when you stop missing the mark, that's what the breaking off part is. Yeah.
Right. And how do you do it? You do it by becoming that person that you want to be.
Right.
He says you do it by righteousness.
Which is completely different from what we were originally taught if we went to Sunday school.
Right? I really got to have the decoder ring on for
Absolutely. Ugh.
He says, my righteousness I hold fast and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me so long as I live. My righteousness shall answer for me in time to come. So it's really interesting when you start looking at that word as defined by being the person that I want to be. Really a different meaning.
Yes. Very
He
different,
says
and a good one that I like. I mean, you
I like
identify
it
different
too.
kind of groups, people who already have a religious orientation and so they feel one way about it, or people who are kind of turned off from it. I'm one of the people who are turned off by it, but you've actually convinced me through the Neville Decoder ring. This has actually got some good stuff in it, really good stuff. And once I've unlearned all my old biases against what I used to know in Christian Sunday school and so forth, yeah, this is cool stuff. This is really good. I can buy into this.
Very good. He says very often the words sin and righteousness are used in the same quotation. This is a logical contrast of opposites and becomes enormously significant in the light of the psychological meaning of righteousness and the psychological meaning of sin. Sin means to miss the mark.
There it is.
Not to attain your desire, not to be the person you want to be, is sinning. Righteousness is the consciousness of already being what you want to be. So take note there that he's talking about the consciousness of already being what you want to be.
Right.
So it's a mental state. It's a consciousness of, and we start there and we can embody the identity of the person that already has the situation we're trying to create. He says it's a changeless educative law that effects must follow causes. Only by righteousness can you be saved from sinning.
The words are. I still read the words, and I still hear the old way. I knew
Right?
them, and I actually have to stop. It's kind of like learning a new language. You know, when you're first
It
learning the
is.
language, you're constantly translating all the time, and that's where I am right now. I'm constantly translating all these. I always have to stop myself. No, that's not what it used to mean. It means this instead.
Right. And just like learning a new language, sometimes there'll be a word that sounds exactly like a word you know in another language,
Hmm.
and it means something completely different.
Right. Yep.
Right? And it's like, wait, what? So that's kind of what's happening here. And I think it's great though when he says, only by righteousness can you be saved from sinning. So only by stepping into the consciousness of the person that you want to be can you stop missing the mark and start hitting the target. Right?
Right.
He says there's a widespread misunderstanding as to what it means to be saved from sin. The following example will suffice to demonstrate this misunderstanding and to establish the truth. A person living in abject poverty may believe that by means of some religious or philosophical activity, he can be saved from sin and his life improved as a result. If, however, he continues to live in the same state of poverty, it's obvious that what he believed was not the truth, and in fact, he was not saved. On the other hand, he can be saved by righteousness. The successful use of the law of assumption would have the inevitable result of an actual change in his life. He would no longer live in poverty. He would no longer miss the mark. He would be saved from sin. And then he quotes another verse. He says, except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven. Now, you know he has his own definitions for all of this as well, correct?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
He says, scribes and Pharisees means those who are influenced and governed by the outer appearances, the rules and customs of the society in which they live, the vain desire to be thought well of by other men. Unless this state of mind is exceeded, your life will be one of limitation, of failure to attain your desires, of missing the mark, of sin. This righteousness is exceeded by true righteousness, which is always the consciousness of already being that which you want to be. One of the greatest pitfalls in attempting to use the law of assumption is focusing your attention on things, on a new home, a better job, a bigger bank balance. This is not the righteousness without which you die in your sins. Righteousness is not the thing, it's the consciousness, the feeling of already being the person you want to be, of already having the thing you desire. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. The kingdom of God is within you. Righteousness is the awareness that you already possess it all.
So we're now learning that the Neville decoder ring is actually a multi-layer ring. So you have to keep turning the dials as you run into new words so you can figure out what the meaning is.
Yes, this is it. I have this thing over here. Now I'm not sure where I put it, but it was definitely like a decoder ring. And I thought I have to bring that to the podcast.
You should, yeah.
It has all these dials and different things on it. So I think that the interesting thing is that what Neville just said about that the pitfall that most people make, and this is important, especially to those of you that showed up today and were like, how do I do this?
Right.
Like, we're at square one. Tell us what to do. Neville says the pitfall that so many people make is that they focus on things they want. They focus on the new house. They want the new car. They want the bigger bank account. That's not to say that we shouldn't want those things. What Neville's saying is that your focus needs to be on the consciousness. What consciousness would you be in? Would you have? What consciousness? If you already had a new house, a new car, a better job, a bigger bank account, a new spouse, whatever it is that you're wanting. Focus there. Focus on what you would be like, not what the house would be like. Mm-hmm. What you would be like if you were that person. If you've ever noticed when a person walks into a room and you're watching them, you can tell what kind of state they're in often by their body language.
Right.
If a person walks in, their shoulders are slumped over and their head is bowed down, you can say, oh, what happened? This person looks sad, or like they're grieving, or like they're really upset. If they walk in with a spring in their step and they're standing up straight and they're smiling on their face, it's like, oh, he must be having a good day because he looks pretty happy, right?
That's true.
That's the state. And Neville is saying, focus on the state that you're in, not the things that you want. So important.
Now,
I love this chapter.
Nasha's got a question. She says, how would you define consciousness in the light of how Neville uses the word?
Well, I believe it's the mental state. That's how I would define it in light of Neville using the word this way. Mm-hmm. I remember a friend of mine told me that she wanted to be a well-funded retiree. That was the word she used. And so I asked her, I said, as you go through your day, just doing the normal things that you do, ask yourself these kind of questions. How does a well-funded retiree sit in the chair while she has her brunch? Mm. How does a well-funded retiree throw the clothes into the laundry into the washer? That sounds ridiculous when you first hear it. Like, what in the world? I'm sure that a well-funded retiree washes their laundry like everyone else. But here's the thing. When you ask yourself that question, something in your body changes. Something in your state changes. If Walt asks himself, how does the owner of the biggest Law of Attraction podcast in the world sit in this chair? You may feel a shift, right? That no one else may.
I'm actually sitting up. That's my first shift. I'm actually sitting up.
That's it.
Yeah.
It changes the way. Mm-hmm. And so it's a great question. Like, how do you define what is this consciousness thing? But it's hard to express in words because it's more of a sense that you have.
Yeah.
That you're someone different and you carry yourself different. And it might be really to a minute measure where most people won't notice, but you'll notice because you'll feel different. And I think that's where it all starts.
It's an interesting point because the goal is to feel different. The goal is to feel, as he says, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And that's not always easy to do. But when you describe it as a part of the concept of consciousness, okay, so now you're conscious of being this new version of you, that has this new feeling, and you're basing it, like you said, on what does the most successful podcast host in the world feel like? Okay, well now I'm putting my imagination to work to try to create that in my mind and make that my experience. Okay, now I'm starting to get an idea of how this whole thing works.
And a lot of times people, money, obviously, the reason why we did the book, the Abraham book, Money and the Law of Attraction, is because money is obviously one of the things that people work on creating more of.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because everything in our world usually takes, money. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the place people run up against where they're trying to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled with money is if you ask them, well, they're like, I want to step into the identity of someone with money, but I don't have money.
Right.
And so if I had money, I could go shop, right? So I go spend the money, and that would be how I would know. But you have to think about it this way. People that have a lot more money than you have are doing lots of the same things that you already do. Mm-hmm. They go to sleep at night. They drink water. They take a shower, right? It's like the thing. So when you're doing those things that you do, whatever they are, you can ask yourself, how does a really wealthy person do this? Sit in a chair, walk down the street. Somebody brought up, I don't know if you're familiar with, well, everyone's familiar with, but the show Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. Someone that I know brought up in one of the episodes, there's a character, Tyrion, and someone says something to him like, you walk like you own these streets. See how it's like just someone walking down the street.
Yeah.
So we all can do that, whether we're already to where we want to be or not, with money, with relationship, with health, whatever. We all have certain things we do in our day.
And you don't have to be a character in the Game of Thrones to do it either.
Yeah, exactly. So ask yourself questions like that, and you'll notice that little bit of a shift in your body. That's you shifting your consciousness.
Yeah. It's an interesting way to think about it, because I don't really think I ever thought of that previously as shifting my consciousness. I always thought I'm just conscious. So everything I'm looking at, that's me in my consciousness. But shifting the consciousness, I guess that's really what we're doing. When we try to imagine, when we're creating through our imagination, just by inventing, whole cloth out of thin air, like a child does. Yeah, we are. Yeah. We're shifting the consciousness. That's true.
We talked this morning about, I can never remember his name. I said it this morning and I still can't remember his name. The scientist that had his affirmation mentioned in the Neville book, or in a Neville lecture. And the affirmation is one of my favorites regarding money. And it's, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Mm-hmm. I love that affirmation, but notice that it's I have. It's not, I'm going to have a lavish, steady, dependable income. It's not, I would like to have. It's, I have. Yes. It's said in the present tense. We're not doing that to tell lies.
Yeah, what's the first thought?
Or to convince anyone else. We're doing that to change our consciousness about it.
And it's an important point, especially for those who are our new listeners today. It seems like we're telling a lie. It seems that's not the way reality is. I have to be true to the way reality is. And that's where, for me anyway, what makes the difference is remembering that a little kid doesn't think of their imaginations as lying. They just think of it as playing a game, pretending. And when you do it that way, now you're not lying anymore.
I love how Neville talks about the greater dimensional space. He calls it the fourth dimension, and it's your imagination.
Yeah.
It's the place, it's the place you go when you close your eyes and start imagining the feeling of your wish already being fulfilled. And so that's the space where you say the affirmation. Mm-hmm. That's the space where you say, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income. Because in that space, you're in an imaginal space where you can be whoever you want, have whatever you want. And when you're in that space and you use those affirmations and you create a certain feeling, You want to hold on to that feeling, even when you come out of the imaginal space, even when you come back into the real world, you want to hold on to that feeling. That's what this work is.
Exactly right. Yeah. And the fact is, when we come back to the real world, it isn't like we have to constantly be imagining. I mean, there are times in the real world where it just doesn't work. I mean, if you're working at your job and you're dealing with your boss, probably not the best time to play with your imaginal world. But that doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. It just means you do it in the times when it's appropriate to do. I mean, there's some times where it's just appropriate to go into your imagination, and those are the times to do it. I like to do it during mundane tasks, house cleaning, doing dishes, making dinner, all that kind of thing.
Right.
Stuff that doesn't require a whole lot of thought. You're just doing stuff, it's a great time to do it.
And the thing is that when we begin to know what it feels like, because it feels good. It feels good to tap into the feeling of the wish, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, of course, we wouldn't be wishing for that thing if we didn't think it was going to feel good.
Absolutely.
When we begin to learn how to do that, then we can have that feeling whenever we want it. And the more often, the better. It doesn't mean we have to be trying to convince someone else that these things have already happened. It just means for our own enjoyment, we can go tap into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Exactly. That's what we talked about this morning when someone said, how do you get this to happen fast? You want to manifest something fast. You want it to come faster? That's how you do it.
There it is.
You close your eyes, fall in love, and stay there. You memorize that feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then you take it with you into the rest of your life, into the rest of your day.
And that's the cool part, because you can carry the feeling anywhere, including when you're meeting with your boss. You can carry it anywhere. It doesn't matter where. Yeah.
And you will stand differently. You will show up differently.
Mm-hmm.
You will.
Yeah.
You will carry yourself differently, and that's all connected to the consciousness.
And that's huge. That's huge. The body language of how you're feeling doesn't just affect other people; it affects you. We're the ones most affected by our own body language.
That's true. Good point.
It really is.
Good point. I'm trying to think. There's a woman that did a TED Talk on body language.
Oh, yeah?
And she talks about how your brain chemistry changes. Like, if you put your hands on your hips and you stand up straight for 30 seconds, you will create a brain chemistry that causes you to be confident.
Interesting.
Right? And so we call that the Wonder Woman pose. Stand up straight, hands on hips. And that's like the advice that we give people. Like, if you're going into a meeting, an important meeting, check into the restroom for 30 seconds before you go into the meeting. Hands on hips, stand up straight, assume the Wonder Woman pose.
Right.
Then go into your meeting. You'll have the brain chemistry that gives you more confidence. So you're right. Our body posture, our body language, it affects us.
It does. Nasha has a question too. You mentioned that imagination is the fourth dimension. She said, regarding the fourth dimension, isn't it when you imagine and screening of the third eye chakra, like on our forehead, and the mental screening, visualizing in such a deep level where you feel it real?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
You want to feel it real. Mm-hmm. That's why we always go into the explanation about the difference between feelings and emotions. Because, if you're wanting a certain thing to happen because you believe that will feel better, or that you'll feel happy with that outcome, and right now the reason why you're wanting it is because you feel sad or frustrated, it's hard to work up happiness from frustration.
It is.
But feelings, like concrete feelings, Neville gives this example of imagine that you're watching yourself and that you're climbing a ladder. But then he says, now imagine the ladder's right in front of you. Imagine reaching out with your hands and grabbing the sides of the ladder, putting your foot on the rung. That's the difference, that feeling. We can do that no matter what our emotional state is. We can tap into the feelings. And so, yes, we want to feel it real.
It's a good phrase.
Correct. Yeah, feel it real. So let's see.
Yeah, I think we
finished up with...
I think we could even go through 21.
20.
Yeah.
Do we have time?
I think so. Yeah. Let's go for 21.
If we don't finish it, we'll do it next week.
Yeah. It's one of the longer chapters. In the book, this is a whole 3 pages, but I think we can do it.
Okay, so the chapter is called Free Will. The question is often asked, what should be done between the assumption of the wish fulfilled and its realization? That's kind of what we talked about earlier with the seeds being planted.
Yep.
He says nothing. It's a delusion that, other than assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you can do anything to aid the realization of your desire.
Try though we might.
And we do. And
we certainly do.
He says you think you can do something, you want to do something, but actually you can do nothing. The illusion of the free will to do is but ignorance of the law of assumption upon which all action is based. Everything happens automatically. I like to say automagically. All that befalls you, all that is done by you, happens. Your assumptions, conscious or unconscious, direct all thought and action to their fulfillment. To understand the law of assumption, to be convinced of its truth, means getting rid of all the illusions about free will to act. Free will actually means freedom to select any idea you desire. By assuming the idea already to be a fact, it is converted into reality. Beyond that, free will ends, and everything happens in harmony with the concept assumed. Then he quotes a verse, I can of mine own self do nothing, because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me. Again, he says in this quotation, the Father obviously refers to God. In an earlier chapter, God is defined as I am. And he has said before that I am is our consciousness.
And that God is our imagination.
And our imagination, yes.
Yeah.
He says, since creation is finished, the Father is never in a position of saying, I will be. In other words, everything exists, and the infinite I am consciousness can speak only in the present tense. Not by will, but thine be done. I will be is a confession that I am not.
Boy, that deserves an underline. I will be is a confession that I am not. It's more than a confession. Right. It's a declaration. It's an insistence. It's saying, I can't be now, so I will only be in the future, which means I am not.
Right, which is why it's so important that we're tapping into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not imagining it as something out there in the future, but as something that's already happening now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this is a big point.
The Father's will is always I am. Until you realize that you are the Father, there's only one I am, and your infinite self is that I am. Your will is always I will be. In the law of assumption, your consciousness of being is the Father's will. The mere wish without this consciousness is the my will. This great quotation, so little understood, is a perfect statement of the law of assumption. It is impossible to do anything. You must be in order to do. If you had a different concept of yourself, everything would be different. You are what you are, so everything is as it is. The events which you observe are determined by the concept you have of yourself. If you change your concept of yourself, the events ahead of you in time are altered. But thus altered, they form again a deterministic sequence starting from the moment of this changed concept. You are a being with powers of intervention, which enable you, by a change of consciousness, to alter the course of observed events, in fact, to change your future. Deny the evidence of the senses and assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Inasmuch as your assumption is creative and forms an atmosphere, your assumption, if it be a noble one, increases your assurance and helps you to reach a higher level of being. If, on the other hand, your assumption be an unlovely one, it hinders you and makes your downward way swifter. Just as the lovely assumptions create a harmonious atmosphere, so the hard and bitter feelings create a hard and bitter atmosphere. Whatsoever things are pure, just, lovely, of a good report, think on these things. This is a good thing to point out when we're talking about unconscious creation, right? Because we're always, I think we read in this chapter, or maybe one of the last few chapters, the idea that we're always assuming a feeling.
Mm-hmm. True.
And if he says the word unlovely, right? But if we're assuming a feeling of something we don't want, then that's what we're going to experience.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The other thought that has been occurring to me, I keep thinking about his use of the phrase law of assumption. And at first I was saying, well, is that the same as the law of attraction? But I realized, no, it really isn't. And I kept thinking about it, and I finally realized it is equivalent to one of the laws that Abraham identifies. It's the science of deliberate creation, or the law of deliberate creation. That's the law of assumption.
Right. So I was going to say the law of attraction works by the law of assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. So Neville goes on to say that this means we should make our assumptions the highest, noblest, happiest concepts. That seems like a no-brainer, but there's no better time to start than now. The present moment is always the most opportune in which to eliminate all unlovely assumptions and to concentrate only on the good. As well as yourself, claim for others their divine inheritance. I like that.
Yes. Well, that's what we do with the podcast.
Right, yes. See only their good and the good in them. Stir the highest in others to confidence and self-assertion by your sincere assumption of their good, and you will be their prophet and their healer, for an inevitable fulfillment awaits all sustained assumptions. You win by assumption what you can never win by force.
Or is that
and
true?
That reminds me of Abraham saying that no amount of action will ever take the place of being in alignment.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah. An assumption is a certain motion of consciousness. This motion, like all motion, exercises an influence on the surrounding substance, causing it to take the shape of, echo, and reflect the assumption. A change of fortune is a new direction in outlook, merely a change in arrangement of the same mind substance, consciousness. Now, he talked about this early on in the book. He talked about the idea that consciousness is a substance,
right,
and that substance is what arranges itself into the actual things that surround us and the situations. He says a change of fortune. That is an interesting thing to take in.
It's a mind-blowing thing to take in is what it is. Consciousness as substance. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that's why it's so hard to describe the idea of a mental state or a shift in consciousness. We automatically have to give it some kind of context. Like we talk about body language.
Mm-hmm.
And we say, because there's substance to a person's body.
True.
Neville is saying there is substance to your consciousness, and it's what creates everything.
Well, it kind of makes sense. I mean, and I'm going to say it in this way just because we have people who are new who have joined us in the meeting here, and also because, at times it's helpful to take a more skeptical stance in order to understand this. If it's true that the law of attraction really does work, that this is how the universe actually operates at its best, then of course consciousness has to be real. It has to be real in order to work with source energy to create more reality. You can't create reality if you're not a part of reality. So yeah, consciousness has to be a substance. It's just such a foreign concept to what we're used to that we're kind of boggled on it. But when you look closer, how could it be anything else, really?
If you're familiar with Wallace Wattles' book, Think and Grow Rich, or no, that's not Wallace Wattles.
No,
Science of Getting
Rich, right?
Is Wallace Wattles. He talks about the thinking stuff. And it's like, he talks about it on and on, the thinking stuff. And that things that are planted in the thinking stuff, a thought that is deposited in the thinking stuff creates the substance of the thought. And it's the same kind of thing. It's like very hard to put into English words what we're talking about here. But yeah, the substance of consciousness. So Neville says if you would change your life, and this is it in a nutshell, this is the most important thing that I will ever take away, I think, from Neville, this idea that if you would change your life, you must begin at the very source with your own basic concept of self. I mean, everything we experience is directly related to our identity. So if we want to experience something different, we need to change our consciousness of our identity. We have to step into a new identity, change our concept of ourself. Let's see. We might be able to do it.
I think so.
Outer change, becoming part of organizations, political bodies, religious bodies, is not enough. The cause goes deeper. The essential change must take place in yourself, in your concept, in your own concept of self. You must assume that you are what you want to be and continue therein. For the reality of your assumption has its being in complete independence of objective fact and will clothe itself in flesh if you persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When you know that assumptions, if persisted in, harden into facts, then events which seem to the uninitiated mere accidents will be understood by you to be the logical and inevitable effects of your assumption. The important thing to bear in mind is that you have infinite free will in choosing your assumptions, but no power to determine conditions and events. You can create nothing, but your assumption determines what portion of creation you will experience.
There it is. Yeah.
So this is the idea we talked about. It's like if everything's already created, then what are we doing? We always say we're conscious creators. Well, we're actually just choosing the thing we want to experience.
And unfortunately, we're also kind of running out of time, but we've got a couple minutes left. And so I want to make sure we use them to the fullest here. First of all, I want to encourage people who are listening, make sure that you check the schedule. If you're not a subscriber, become a subscriber. That's the best way to know what's on the schedule. But if you're listening to the live stream, check the schedule. I'm trying to keep it up to date, and you'll know when each of our upcoming episodes are. So that we're having a lot more Q&A sessions. So people who wanted to ask questions, please come to the Q&A sessions. They're actually proving to be really, really popular. And we're probably going to do more and more and more of them because, hey, when people respond, we'll say, yeah, okay, we'll do more of those. That's cool.
Yeah.
So we want to encourage that. And also I want to encourage people to reach out to Cindie too, because, I mean, I have to, I know I've said this before, but I have to say it again. Cindie is one of the most amazing people I know in terms of her breadth of knowledge, the research she's done, the studying she's done. I would not be able to understand Neville if it weren't for Cindie. And even more than that, she's a phenomenal life coach. So if you have questions, well, first of all, if you want to know where to get your Neville decoder ring, contact Cindie. But more than that, if you're looking for answers to questions, maybe you need to hire a coach, whatever, I want you to reach out to her. And Cindie, tell people how they can reach you.
Yeah, they can find me online at cindiechavez.com, CindieChavez.com. Same name, Facebook and Twitter. You can tweet at me. I will see that. I don't always see Facebook messages, but email works really well, and there's a contact form on my website. So I would love to hear from you. Just give me a shout. Say hello.
And she's a very busy woman. I mean, don't be upset if you don't hear from her right away. She will get back to you. I guarantee she will get back to you. But she has so many appointments she's dealing with and so many people she's helping. It takes a little time, but she will get back to you. So please, avail yourself of reaching out to her. And Cindie, I mean, this is like the best part of my week, always these 3 days that we do. And at the end of them, I say, geez, I have to wait another week. So I look forward to doing this again with you starting next Tuesday.
Next week, I'll be back.
All right. I'll be back too. We hope that you'll join us next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.